Hello. This recording is intended to demonstrate both the t-test and how to run it in a number of different software packages, and also a very useful data storage format that is convenient to transfer data between numerous software packages. The data format is called the comma separated value format, CSV, and I'm going to show you very briefly how to get this and how to look at it and edit it. So what I have here is a set of pre-test and post-test data for a control group, which I've indicated as 0, and a treatment group, which I've indicated as 1. Now I've entered the data in Excel simply because it's a convenient software package that's generally readily available. But when I go to save this, I want to save it as a CSV file. So under File, I'm going to choose Save As, and here I'm going to change the format to one of the predetermined formats, which is the comma separated values format, the CSV. And when I save it, I've called it mydata.csv. Excel will come up with a brief warning saying that if you do this, you may lose some information. And this is actually true. You will lose some information with regards to the formatting because the CSV file only saves the information where every row is a unique record and every quote-unquote column in that row is separated by a comma. So I'll click Continue, and if you notice, it saved it as mydata.csv. Now I'm going to go ahead and close Excel here, and it's warning me, do you actually want to save the changes to mydata.csv? And if you're thinking, wait, I just did save it, it is saved, but it doesn't save all of the Excel formatting stuff. So from that perspective, it doesn't think it's actually been saved. I'm going to go ahead and say don't save. And now I'm going to go ahead and close Excel completely. And if I click on mydata.csv, I'll double click that to open it. It opens with Excel and pretty much looks like the data is the same. I'll zoom in a little bit. But what's actually been saved in the CSV file, I'm going to close Excel again, and this time I'm going to open the CSV with Notepad, or I'll use TextEdit in this case, and you'll see that literally the only information that's been recorded in this file is the text, and every quote-unquote column has been separated by a comma, and every new line indicates a new row. So this data set, this data format storage is actually quite small, relatively speaking. So the Excel file was about, if you look here, is about 34 kilobytes, whereas the data file saved in the CSV format is only 310 bytes. So this is very convenient for sharing information and data sets between different programs, but it's also very convenient for if you have lots and lots and lots of data that takes up a lot of space. Storing it in an Excel file or an SPSS file can take up a lot of storage space, whereas if you put it in a CSV, it may actually take up less space. Now what I want to do next is I want to use this data to run a couple of the standard t-tests. And I'm going to do this first in SPSS. So I'm going to go ahead and open SPSS. And the first step is to import the data in the CSV format into SPSS. So under File, I'm going to say Read Text Data. And in this case, I've stored it in a temp folder. I'll bring in the mydata.csv, which is actually indicated as one of the formats. And I'll say Open. And this will take me to a dialog box that I'll have to walk through. So it's always best to say that it doesn't match a predefined format unless you've saved one before, and in this case I haven't, so I'll say no. Click Continue. It is delimited. It's been delimited by a comma. Every column is separated by a column, and my variable names are included at the top, and you can see that in the preview format. So I'll check yes. I'll click Continue. Each line does represent a case. I want to import all the cases, and it automatically populated this indicator value here that the first case of the data begins on line number 2 because the first row contained the variable names. Sometimes you may have information about each variable in row number 2, in which case you'd want to change that value to its appropriate value. I'll click Continue. The delimiters are indeed the comma. There are no quotations here, but I always change this to double quote. Click Continue, and this specifies it's possible to go in and change the format for each of the variables that it's bringing in. I'm going to let it go with the default. I'll click Continue. I don't want to save this file format for the future. I don't want to paste the syntax, and so I'll go ahead and say Done. And now my data has been read into SPSS, and I can do the various analyses that I'm interested in doing here. The first column has the row number, the second column has the treatment value, the next column has the pre and post values. So to start, I actually want to run two tests. So the first test is I want to know if there's a difference between the post-test score for the treatment group and the post-test score for the control group. I'm going to move over to variable very briefly because I notice that the measures have been brought in as nominal for both the treatment and the row number, and as scale data for the pre and post-test data. If the treatment hadn't been brought in as nominal, I'd want to change this by clicking and selecting scale or nominal. Out of that list, I would want nominal. So to run the t-test, I'll choose Analyze, Compare Means. I want to run an independent samples t-test, and I want to look at the post-test score. I'll move that to the test variables. My grouping variable is the treatment. I'll move that, I'll highlight that and select it. Click Define Groups, and my treatment group is 0 and 1. Alternatively, I could have selected Cut and put in a value between that, for example, 0.5. And just to make sure, I'll check the options. Confidence interval is 95. I can change that to 98 if I wanted to, for example. And I'll select OK. And this gives me the output for running the t-test to ask if the post-test scores are statistically different for the treatment group versus the control group. I see that I get a p-value of 0.123, indicating that there's really actually not a difference between the two groups. Now, alternatively, another test that I could run is I could do let me go back to the data to view the data here. Alternatively, I can ask maybe there's a difference between the pre-test scores and the post-test scores. In this case, I want to ask if there's a difference between the scores for each of the, so in other words, is there a significant difference between the post-test and the pre-test for each individual? So in this case, I'm actually still doing under Analyze, Compare Means. I'm still comparing the means, but in this case, I want to do a paired samples t-test. In this case, I'll highlight both pre and post at the same time and move them to the populated variables. For options, again, the confidence interval has been set to 95%. I'm going to change that to 90 just to have a different value in there, or better yet, 99. I'll say Continue, and then I click OK, and this generates the output. And I see that my 99% confidence interval for the difference between pre-test and post-test is negative 0.58 and change and 1.06. I see that 0 is contained within the confidence interval, so I can't rule out the likelihood that this value, this difference of 0.24 between the pre and post average, isn't something attributable by chance. In fact, the p-value for that conclusion is about 0.418 or 0.42. All right, so I'm going to stop here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the analyses that I just ran here in Excel as well.